Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the On Your Way podcast. My name is Darla Bonk. I am your host, and we talk about overcoming the obstacles that are in your way so that you can get on your way to building and living the life you love. Today, we are going to talk about the emotional edge in leadership. Let's get into it. So, I want to start today with a mind blowing statistic. And some of you may know this because you're educated, but others of you may be shocked with this statistic. Leaders with high emotional intelligence are 34% more effective at leading change and managing their staff. Your ability to connect emotionally is not just a nice to have, it is a game changer. So let's debunk this whole entire myth about you have to remain neutral emotionally in business, because I believe your passion, your drive, your dedication, which comes from a place of emotion, which comes from a place in your heart, is what is a game changer of good leaders and great leaders. Having a care and a compassion for your team, I think, changes the game from good leaders to great leaders. If you don't have an emotional attachment to the business you have, to the service you're selling, to the product you're selling, if you don't believe in what you're selling, that changes the game, in my view, from a good leader to a great leader. Your team recognizes when you care about them. Your clients recognize when you care about them. Your community recognizes when you care about them. That comes from a place of emotion. And I believe that is what allows that human connection to truly form and then transform the way that you do business, the way that you show up for your teams, the way you show up in your life, and how you are actually able to build and live a life and business that you love. That sounds easy enough, I know, but how often do we as leaders get into that stagnation of the process of our business? How often do we get into just the rigmarole of the businesses that we have, the community that we are a part of, the team that we lead, and we just go into this autopilot mode, right? But think about when you guys are most collaborative, when you have the most creativity happening from your team. What is happening? There is an emotion of what? Excitement. There's emotion of joy. There's emotion of a future of what could be. Think of Steve Jobs. Think of the Elon Musks of the world, regardless of what you think about them personally, or they may be the greatest thing you've ever had or thought of in terms of people. Their emotion about what the future could be, their emotion of we can be on Mars, their emotion of we can have our entire lives wrapped up in a device and everyone in the world will have one. The excitement of that, the joy of that, the creativity and collaboration that comes from that stems from emotion. And in businesses, we are finding more and more of that emotion being stagnant and that emotion being checked at the curb as we walk into the door, literally or figuratively, when I cannot tell you how many CEOs and C-suite leaders are dealing with in these interviews of people that they are looking to hire, questions growing more and more from people who are deciding whether or not they want to come and work for a company. They are asking them, tell me about the mission of this company and what you do to give back in the community. What is your purpose? What is your drive? And is what you do as a company going to align with my values as a person? And is that alignment going to impact the decision I make on whether to come and work for you, regardless of if you're paying me multiple six figures and a beautiful 401k and a beautiful stocks option? If there is not an alignment of values and purpose, those conversations are creating a friction. And that has been a new component in the last decade that CEOs and leaders and founders and C-suite executives are having to account for and solve for, because we have been taught for so many years and generations, emotion does not have a place in business. I say forget that. Throw that out the window. Now, I am not asking you to go lead with every emotion on your sleeve and what do I feel like doing or what do I feel like saying. That's not what this is. But we are emotional beings. We have to solve for being able to have a component of emotion in business that is rational, that makes sense, and that can drive our business to drive production. Because remember, as leaders, we are inspiring greatness. I cannot demand production unless I want to be ruthless. I need to inspire the production. And how do I do that if there is not an emotional component? Think about music. How many times do you hear music and it can make you happy? It can make you sad. It can make you joyful. It can make you have expressions of dance. It can make you want to sit and just stare out the window and remember that moment, right? It comes from a place of emotion. Think about your favorite movie. It made you laugh. It made you cry. It made you think. It made you have compelling thoughts about who we are as a species. Those come from emotions. Why would business be any different? It shouldn't be, in my opinion. So let's talk about the power of emotional intelligence. Okay. Studies show that that studies show that employees with empathetic leaders see a 76% increase in engagement and a 61% increase in creativity. Studies show that employees with empathetic leaders see a 76% increase in engagement and a 61% boost in creativity. We all know that old statistic that people go to work for a company, but they quit their leader, they quit their manager, right? Imagine what would happen in your company if your people saw you become a more empathetic leader, what that would relate to and result in terms of an increase in engagement and an increase in creativity. How would that impact your team? How would that drive your business? What kind of boost would that give you and your team from a revenue perspective, from a sales perspective? And let's talk about that. Let's talk about our top performers in our businesses. High emotional intelligence accounts for 90% of what sets the top performers apart. 90%. And organizations with emotionally intelligent leaders are 4 times more likely to retain skilled employees. Are you guys getting this? Is this resonating? Because remember, as long as there is breath in your body, and you hear me say this to you all the time in this community, you have the power to change your circumstances. You have the power to change the way your business operates. You have the power to change the way you lead your team. You have the power to change the way you show up for your family, the way you show up for your community, the way you show up for your friends. You have that choice that you get to make. So, why not start by injecting some passion into your leadership style? Well, Darla, that's going to go against my board. They're not going to be on board with this. I don't do that. That's not who I am. That doesn't resonate with me. Let's try it. Think about it this way. Number 1, practice some self-awareness. Everyone thinks they are self-aware, but the actuality is that really about 15% of leaders in executive roles today actually have emotional intelligence and operate in that flow of emotional intelligence. So do some self-awareness. How are you showing up in your business? Where is there an opportunity for you to celebrate a win with the team? And not just because that's what they're hired to do, but because maybe they landed a great client, a hard client, a client that took a 18-month sales cycle and they actually got it. And it turned out to be more revenue on the hook than you thought it was going to be. The PO is higher than what you thought it was going to be. How can you celebrate that win with your team member? What if you were to ask them, how does that feel to have that win? So even if that's not something you're comfortable expressing, how can you give them the space to feel comfortable? How can you hold space for them to feel comfortable expressing their emotion, their gratitude, their excitement about something that has happened at work? How can you become more present in rooms to show and share your emotion, even if that means you have to be vulnerable? That can allow for your team to see you are a human being, that you can be relatable, and that there is a connection that can be made. Cultivate empathy. Cultivate empathy. How can you express a way that shows you understand the situation that one of your people are going through, one of your clients are going through, one of your coworkers workers is going through? I can't imagine how that feels. Can you share with me a little bit more about that? How can I support you in this endeavor? What are the questions you can ask that can show the person you actually care about what's happening for them, and that you're not just trying to transition and get through the conversation, right? Think about it this way. How can you communicate openly and honestly, and not in a way that is the bull in a china shop? How can you sit there and say to your team, guys, we really need to increase our sales this quarter, not just because we're on the hook for it, but because here's where the vision is. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm trying to be able to give you guys benefits. I'm trying to be able to give you guys a better bonus structure. I'm trying to be able to provide the next layer or next iteration of what our tech stack is going to look like that we offer to clients. And if we can increase this by X in the next quarter, I can then go out for funding over here for this, or I can go and ask investors for this, or it allows us to provide a better product or a better concept for our clients moving forward. How can you be honest with your team and say, guys, we're going to have to really step it up and make up for what we didn't get in Q4 or Q1, whatever those may be? And then how can you lead by example? How can you take that layer of onion off and say, guys, I really am and struggling. I'm having some hard times with this. Maybe you have some maybe kids in your house are grown and gone, and maybe your wife's struggling. You guys are struggling with being empty nesters. You thought it was going to be beautiful and wonderful, and maybe you're struggling with it. How could you share that with your team in a way that would allow your team to see you're a human and relatable also? And ask them, hey, I'd love to have your input on what I could do. I'm struggling in this way. What would you guys suggest? How can you guys help me? Because when you lead with emotion, you are not just improving your own performance, you are going to transform your entire organization. And companies that focus on emotional intelligence as a practice, as a KPI, are 22 times more likely to perform those companies who do not. So the money, I can put the money, put your money where your mouth is. I can show you this. I'm showing you these stats. I'm giving you this information that shows you it translates into revenue, which can translate into profitability, right? And so many of you, gosh, so many of you guys are saying we need to grow in 2025. We need to grow our market share. We need to grow. Growth does not equal profitability, guys. It does not equal profitability. Those are two different things. It can lead to profitability, but that doesn't mean what it is. So let me ask you this question. Time for some reflection. How often do you allow yourself to be vulnerable with your team? Take a pass at the last week, the last month, since 2025 started. How often have you allowed yourself to be vulnerable with your team? How long have some of these people been with you in your business and they've never seen you be emotional about anything? What would happen? What could happen? What could that look like if you show just a little bit of vulnerability with your team? And what's one emotion that you have been holding back that could actually inspire your employees? What emotion could you actually show them that would inspire them? You're not dumb. You know what those things are. You know what your team is looking for. Take down the facade, take down the wall, connect with your people. They have bought into your purpose. They have bought into the goal that you are trying to accomplish. They have bought into the business that you have created, and they have staked their livelihood on it. The least you can do is show them something that can inspire them. from an emotional perspective, from a vulnerability perspective, from a human connection perspective. So, in order to build and live the life you love, as we always say, ball out, build and live the life you love, you have to harness the power of your emotions. So, number one, recognize your emotional triggers. This isn't getting defiant and angry and unleashing, well, I'm just being emotional. Darla said to be emotional. That's not what this is. Let's use some common sense. But recognize what those emotional triggers are, right? Practice active listening. Don't just try to hustle through the conversation when you come in on Monday mornings and you walk through the bullpen and you're asking the team how they're doing and you're just trying to get through each one to say you did it and mark it off the list. Really sit with them, be present, put the phone away. You hold this phone up while you're talking to your team, you're telling them that 8 billion other people also get your attention. When you put this down, you're saying, you are the only one who gets my attention. Tell me about your weekend. So, Bobby got to score the home run. How was that for you and your family? What I bet you were a proud dad in that moment. What did that feel like? Share that experience with them through your active listening, through asking your questions. And then that allows you to do then the next thing, which is celebrate the wins, which are big and small. Celebrate those wins. And then create a safe space for emotional expression. Create a safe space for emotional expression. If the team isn't rocking, they're not jiving, the sales aren't coming in, what if you were to huddle them all together and get them in the conference room and say, hey guys, let's just talk it out. There's a little bit of friction here in the room today. Listen to calls. They don't sound great. You guys aren't operating on your tip-top shape. And I know if you could, you would. If you could, you would, just like kids. If they can do better, we would hope that they will. If they knew better, they would do better, right? Same thing for adults. I know if you guys could be hitting on all cylinders, you sure would. Let's talk about what's going on. What's holding you back? What's keeping you? What are the challenges? Let's talk about where your head's at right now. Let's find a way to navigate through these tough waters so we can go back out there and all feel like we are winning and hitting on all cylinders in the right direction, cohesively together. Let's communicate, let's collaborate, let's celebrate, and let's go back out there and win. What could that look like? What could that look like if you led like that? Imagine a workplace where people feel truly seen and truly heard. And that is the legacy of an emotional leader. You hear me say this all the time. It is about impact over influence and legacy more than just leadership. And so that's the legacy of the emotional leader. When your people feel seen and heard, even in your absence, I know this is what Darla would want me to do. This is what Darla made me believe I was capable of doing. So I'm going to go lean on her belief in me until I can do that for myself, and I'm going to execute. I have been inspired to be great. She has inspired me to produce, right? Embracing emotion and leadership is not a sign of weakness. I think it is a power every leader possesses, and it's one very few tap into. Tap into and harness that power because it is about creating a legacy that lasts. And as we wrap up, I just want you to remember that you are a masterpiece created with a unique purpose. And when you lead with emotion, you're not just doing your job, you are fulfilling your calling, guys. So I hope if any of this has helped you, and if you can take a step tomorrow and start doing something different as a leader, leading with emotional intelligence, you are one step closer to being on your way to building and living the life you love. All right, guys, make it a great day. Talk to you next week.